Well, good evening, and thank you all for joining us tonight. I think we may have a few more folks that we're expecting to join us yet, but I show a little past 5:30 and certainly want to honor all of your time of the folks here. And so thank you for coming. You know, all of us have been dealing with a lot of traumatic events in the past few years, either directly with COVID or things that have happened that you're directly involved with, or indirectly through what we've seen in media, social media, network media. There has just been a lot of traumatic events that even for the most resilient individuals is a lot to handle. And it's especially a lot for our kids to be handling. According to SAMHSA, a federal agency, more than 2/3 of children have experienced at least one traumatic event by the time they're 16 years old. But whether kids are facing trauma of losing a loved one or abuse, everyday anxiety about things like COVID or unpredictable routines, our kids need our support now more than ever before. In 2020, there was a survey, the CDC did 1,000 parents around the country. 71% of parents said the pandemic had taken a toll on their children's mental health. And 69% said the pandemic caused more upheaval, was one of the worst things that their child had ever experienced. Not necessarily because they had COVID, but because of how it impacted their lives. Taking that a step further, mental health crises among kids are also on the rise. From March 2020 to October 2020, mental health related emergency room visits increased 24% for children ages 5 to 11, and it increased 31% for children ages 12 to 17 compared to what it was in 2019. Chaddock works with kids and families struggling with trauma and attachment from throughout the U.S. We've served children and their families from 38 states in our residential program, and professionals from more than 100 countries have downloaded resources Chaddock has developed on attachment and trauma. Also, as a member of the National Child Traumatic Stress Network, Chaddock has access to and contributes to the latest research on effective treatment strategies for children struggling with attachment and trauma. Tonight, in addition to the printed resources we have here at the front of the room, which I hope you'll pick up before you leave if you haven't already, we also want to give you a chance to interact directly with some of our trauma experts. So I'm going to ask our panel to comment on a number of questions, and then we're going to give you, our audience, a chance to ask questions as well. And that usually is the best way to silence a room when you ask if anyone has questions. So, as an incentive, the first 3 people to ask a question will get a copy of our book, Raising the Challenging Child. Now, before we get started, I want to make all of you aware that we are recording this discussion so we can post it on our website for individuals who were not able to join us this evening. Now, I would like to introduce our panel. All of them are master's level professionals with extensive training and experience working with children and families struggling with issues related to attachment and trauma. Josh Carlson, it's hard to pick out which one's Josh. Josh Carlson on the end is our executive director of the Knowledge Center at Chaddock. Josh has been with our organization for 18 years in a variety of roles, and currently does a lot of work in the area of trauma-informed schools, the Developmental Trauma and Attachment Institute, and prevention services for early childhood populations throughout the state. Kirsty Ruggles, sitting next to Josh, has been with Chaddock for 8 years and shares her expertise as the lead trainer for the Knowledge Center at Chaddock. She works primarily with early childhood professionals and educators, training them on trauma-informed schools. Next, we have Marcia Ryan. Marcia has been with Chaddock for 33 years. She is our Associate Director of Client Services and works extensively with parents in our foster care program, through parent coaching, and in our in-home intensive program, where she goes into homes for 10 hours a day for 4 days in a row. In fact, just came back from one very recently. And so works, but her real specialty is working with parents. And Amanda Bex is a clinical supervisor for our residential program, and she's been with Chaddock for 20 years. She was 10 when she started here. She works with some of our most challenging young people and their families in our residential program, and also works with families throughout the country with our in-home intensive as well. So I'm going to start out giving them some questions to answer. And then after a bit, we will open it up for questions from the audience. But I want to start with Josh. What is trauma? That's a term that gets thrown around a lot. But what exactly does it mean to say someone's experienced trauma?
Yeah, so this is one of the things that Kirsty and I talk a lot about in our trauma-informed schools training, and that is we really look at 3 definitions when we're trying to help educators understand what trauma is, and I think that's really important. The first one is just the word trauma. If you ask 10 different people what the word trauma means, you're probably going to get 10 different answers. And a lot of times people come back with, isn't that like something like the ER show on TV? People automatically go to like medical trauma. And so first helping people understand that trauma, according to the National Child Traumatic Stress Network, is an event where I believe my life or the life of somebody else was in danger. So that's one definition that we think is really important. The next one is developmental trauma, and that looks at a child experiencing abuse or neglect from 0 to 5 that really impacts their development and the milestones as they grow. And one of the key things to think about developmental trauma is that often happens within the context of the caregiving system. And so the individual experiences the caregiver who is really there to help them thrive can actually become a threat to their very existence. And then the last one is adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. And that is a research study that was done in the late 90s by the CDC and Kaiser Permanente. And what they did is they looked at 10 adverse childhood experiences. They identified 10 and looked at the impact on health outcomes. And what they discovered is that the more adverse childhood experiences that an individual had, the greater chance they had of having poor health outcomes and even an impact on their life expectancy. I think it's like a ACE score of like 6 or 7 can reduce your life expectancy by 20 years. And so they start looking at the connection between those experiences and neurodevelopment, how the brain develops for those children, and then how they are able to function within their community, within their family, within their schools. And then we see the risk-taking behavior. That could be smoking, that could be overeating, that could be promiscuity, drugs. And then you see chronic illness and then early death. And so when we talk about helping support kids who have experienced trauma, it's really one, helping them to understand that there's different ways to look at it, but it all impacts kids in the same way, which is that neurodevelopment, and that we're not just emotionally supporting them in the moment, but maybe even adding years to their life of them, helping bounce back from those experiences.
Can you touch, just, you don't have to list all 10 of them, but some of the kinds of things that make up ACEs that, might not necessarily be from a horribly abusive home? A child can still have some ACEs.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think the other thing is that this was a research study that looked at 10 different types of experiences. There are a plethora of traumas, a plethora of experiences that a child can have that can have a negative impact on them. But this is just the 10 that they looked at. And it was things like a parent being incarcerated, separation from parents. So think about a child who, in a family where the parents divorced. Mental illness within the family, so that could be depression, anxiety, something going on with the caregivers and the parents or the child's parents that could impact that environment, and then substance use. So if you think about just those that I named off, you can see how quickly kids can experience an adverse childhood experience.
Okay, Marcia. So parents, Marcia works a lot with parents. So parents themselves may be struggling with fear or anxiety about local, national, or international events. How can they keep their own fears from impacting their child?
Well, it's really important to understand that kids feel what we're feeling. Kids start responding negatively when they see their parents are stressed. And they may know it before we even know it first. So everything might be status quo. You start watching something on the TV, you know, whether it's, you know, the increase in gas prices, the increase in food, as simple as that, or, you know, the shootings that are happening. You're watching this on TV and you're starting to get stressed out. You know, these kids pick up on that and they may not even know and understand what's going on, but what they see is, oh, dad's stressed. What's going on with dad? Oh, mom's. And then they say, mom, and you go, what? You know, well, we don't even realize they're doing it. What they're hearing is our stress and our anxiety. And a lot of research out there that says brain chemistries when you live together start matching. So if mom and dad are stressed out, children are going to be stressed out. And oftentimes they don't know why. Mom and dad are stressed out. Where's the next meal coming from? How are we going to pay for the gas? The kids feel that. So it's really critical that first off, we understand as parents, our stress, you know, what are our stress indicators? Debbie said, I work with parents all the time. Parents have to know where it starts. And if they notice that their kids are starting to act testy or snarky, the first thing is take a look at yourself. You know, you see something, go to the restroom, look in the mirror, say, okay, it's that frowny face that I'm making. Okay, I got to be aware of that. Or have the spouses say, okay, you're looking a little stressed today. So you can be aware of that. Oftentimes they say they feel it in their chest, or they feel it in their shoulders. It's going to be so critical that we take care of ourselves. Take 15 minutes and take the dog for a walk. You know, if you've got a lot of kids, take 10 minutes and go to the bathroom and just breathe. You know, just take a breath, because how we present is how the kids are going to present. Whatever you do as a parent, as a person to calm, whether it's, you know, laugh. I love to laugh. And so if it's just sitting down with your kid and watching a funny show, if you're laughing, you can't be in back brain. Okay, your brain doesn't work that way. And if you're not in back brain, if you're not responding from a stress perspective, the kids aren't going to be responding to the stress perspective. Turn off that news. Turn off the stressors and get down on the kids' level and play with them and make the kids a priority, because there's a lot of stress just being a kid in itself. I mean, the lunchroom is a stress for kids. So we have in our home have to create kind of a stress-free zone. So we have to regulate ourselves to regulate kids.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we're talking about kids being stressed. Kirsty, what kind of things parents might be saying are going, okay, I get that, but I'm not really sure what to look for to know if my child is feeling stressed out. What kind of signs can a parent look for?
Well, I think to begin with, I want to go back to what Josh said about the different types of trauma, because there's going to be some slight nuances in symptomology. You know, if you have a child who experiences a singular trauma, maybe they've been in a car wreck, maybe they have a loss of a loved one, that child is going to display some quite overt symptoms, you know, maybe having some nightmares, some temper tantrums, depending on how old they are, some dysregulation in their behaviors, you know, not being able to manage their emotions, maybe having some flashbacks. And I think that those are going to be very obvious after the event. Now, if we think about developmental trauma, so let's take COVID, for example. COVID has been stressful for everybody, but when it becomes traumatic, particularly for our children, is when they have multiple other stresses happening. So we've got our children, as Marsha said, we've got families who are struggling to buy food, to drive to work, and then COVID on top of that, and then everyone at home. So now we have a child who is potentially experiencing some more developmental trauma. And because it's ongoing, the symptoms are going to be a little more subtle, but pervasive. So, you know, struggling to remember things, struggling to problem solve, all of the higher level functioning that our front brain deals with. Marsha mentioned back brain, you know, our front level, higher level brain executive functioning. So again, problem solving, struggling to remember things, struggling to follow directions, not being able to regulate those emotions. So linking the back to the front brain. And so we often see defiant, what we consider defiant behavior, disrespectful behavior. So looking for those changes in your child that weren't there before. But again, with developmental trauma and ongoing trauma, it can be really hard to know what was baseline, what should they be acting like. So the one thing that we like to say is always ask what's behind the behavior. You know, all behavior has meaning. And so, as Marsha said, take a moment to regulate yourself and ask what's really going on here. Is it something that's been caused by ongoing trauma, or is it just a bump in the road that we're having at this moment?
If you think about it with babies, when they cry, oh, they're tired, we think about what's underneath that behavior. When they get a little bigger, we don't necessarily stop and think what's driving that behavior. So, okay, so Amanda, once you've figured out that you know, you've identified some signs of trauma or a child struggling, how can parents best support that child?
So I think the first thing, and Marsha alluded to this, was if we don't take care of ourselves first, we can't take care of anyone else. So you think of being on a flight, and flight attendants like, you know, put on your oxygen mask before you can put it on others. If we're not taking care of ourselves, we're not good for our children. Our children mirror us. Our children are looking for us for safety and trust. So we need to be sure that we're emotionally present and available for them. I think validating their feelings, telling the kids it's going to be okay. I don't know that it's going to be okay. I'm not going to tell them I don't know it's going to be okay, but I'm going to say I know it's scary, or, you know, I don't know what's going to happen, but this is what we can do, and we can do it together. Use age appropriate language for our kids. You know, you're not going to give a whole dissertation to a 3-year-old on why COVID's scary or why school shootings are happening. Just keep it simple and to the point. Dr. Karen Purvis would say, more than 12 words, you're spitting in the wind. Because if we're talking to our kids, we're asking them to be in the front part of their brain, right? That's my executive function, that's problem solving, that's thinking, okay. But if I'm stressed and I'm in back brain with fight, flight, or freeze, I'm not going to understand anything that you're saying. You are sounding to me like Charlie Brown's teacher. I hear wah, 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 but I'm looking for you to give me an answer and help me feel safe because you're the adult. Where are you? Find time for connection with your kids, rituals, any type of connection, because if we're not connected, we don't have anything else. We have to find that felt safety at the bottom before we can build. Do your best to monitor exposure. I know that that's really hard with TV, social media, all of that. But I think as parents, we have a responsibility as another way to support our kids with that. Having regular and honest conversations, if it's possible. I encourage you to do that. That shows that you're open, we're building trust, we're building safety, and have conversations with other supports. We as parents need help. We can't do it by ourselves. So I would encourage parents to reach out to schools, whether that's your child's counselor, whether it's teacher. We can't do it by ourselves. We need connection with others to help this kid, because they're seen in different environments. They're going to present in different environments based on the trauma that they've had. And respond to them, don't react. You know, we're looking what's underneath of that behavior, I think is a consistent theme that we're seeing when our kids are stressed. Like, we know how we are when we're stressed. We're going to explode. We're going to say things that we don't mean, but it's not really about what's at that superficial level. It's what's underneath. How was their day? What did they see? What did they hear? So you're going to have to be a detective, and we're going to have to dig deeper until we hit that, because they may not have the words to tell us what really is bothering them. So again, as the adult, making that connection, so we have that attunement with our kids.
So you talked about developing rituals with your kids. Give me an example of rituals.
So I think, in a simple rituals, is it a family game night? Is it for smaller children, is it a bedtime routine? Is it, okay, we're gonna have snack, we're gonna have story, we're gonna have a lullaby, we're gonna go to bed? Because when I have rituals, that's consistency and predictability, which is again gonna allow me to help my child feel safe.
Thank you. Okay, Josh, you work a lot with little kids, early childhood age children. Are little kids, I mean, they don't really notice what's going on around us, right? What does trauma look like? What does trauma look like with a younger child versus an older child?
Sure. So the first thing I think we need to address is your rhetorical question, which is we often think that, oh, they're not going to remember. And Bessel van der Kolk wrote a book called The Body Keeps the Score. And that is where if the child can't verbally tell you what's going on, they feel it within their body. And so the other thing with that is that sometimes experiences happen pre-verbally, and so they might not actually have words to put to what's going on, but they just know something's not right. And so again, they feel it within their body, they feel it within their, their heart, their mind, they know something's off. And I think, Marcia kind of said a lot of the things that I was going to answer for this question. And that is watch what we're doing. A lot of work with little kids, birth to 5, is actually with the adults. And so if I'm going to go work with little Johnny, who's 2, and Kirsty's Johnny's mom, I'm actually going to be doing more with Kirsty than with Johnny. And so I think that, as we need to think about what kind of exposure Johnny's getting, and then our reaction to that exposure. So again, it's a lot of the work is with the adults. And so you think about a little toddler that's trying to learn to walk, and they're toddling around and they fall down and almost hit the coffee table. What do? And the baby doesn't do anything until they see you go, and then they get scared. So that's a really great example that we see all the time of how our kids look to us for how to react and respond to something. And so it's super important that we are watching and taking care of ourselves so that we can create that environment to help support them. The other thing that I think is really important is that, again, we're talking about behaviors, and all behavior has meaning. And so one key difference is that little kids will play what they're thinking about or what's on their mind or in their heart. And so they might act it out. But so often as adults, what they're acting out might make us uncomfortable. Again, what's going on with the adult versus the child. And so it's about noticing what the child is doing, talking about it, feeling comfortable, putting our discomfort aside and saying, oh, Johnny, I noticed that you are doing this. I wonder how you feel. I wonder if you feel sad. And so kind of helping narrate that, helping them to learn that it's okay to go through that process. I think so often parents are afraid of getting it wrong. And so they just say, we don't talk about that, or that's nothing, don't worry about it. And again, it's because, well, Johnny's not going to remember anyways. But that's really more about our discomfort than Johnny's discomfort. Johnny notices when there's something going on, when there's tension in the household. We often say the kids are watching us more than we're watching them. And that's true whether you're in a school or at home or in a residential setting. The kids are always looking to us. So yeah, and then when it comes to the key difference between the kids and adolescents, I think that again, little ones are not going to be able to verbalize. So you might be able to talk with kids, but really often we're just little kids in bigger bodies. And so it might come out a little differently, but there's still a lot of that co-regulation, a lot of the things that we talked about here, rituals, those opportunities for connection. They might look different. You know, the way I show my 5-year-old nurture is different than the way I show my almost 18-year-old, right? And so it's thinking about how's that different, but they both need nurture, but it might just look a little different.
So you talked about kids notice things. So should you ask them what's wrong with you?
Well, I don't know that I would ask what's wrong with you. I think, you know, using like I noticed or I'm curious statements, like I noticed that, you know, I noticed that you seemed upset when you saw that on TV. And afterwards, you slammed your door. I wonder what's going on for you and if you'd like to talk about it. And if they say no, then that's okay. But I'm here when you're ready. And then you find those ways to provide that balance of structure and nurture, that connection to really just, I'm here when you're ready.
Right. Okay, we're gonna jump back to Marcia. So, Marcia, even at the best of times, adolescents and teenagers can sometimes have a bit of an attitude. So, what kind of attitude should the parents have in response to that?
Okay. Adolescents with attitudes are my favorite. I love adolescents with attitude.
She's not joking.
I mean, and I'm gonna say this, and I hope we have time, but it's just a very short story, so. But I was in a home, and it just popped into my head, and I can't get out of it. With a 13-year-old boy that's like 6'2", and he's like really big, and I'm working with mom and dad, and he's like blowing school, he's got an ankle monitor, God love him. And so I'm trying to work with parents, and he's like hovering over mom, and she says to him, hold on, I'm talking to Marcia. And he looked at me and he's called me the B word out of nowhere. And I'm like, oh, dang it, I was trying so hard not to be that today. You know, and then that's what I was doing. And he kind of looked me up and I said, and now I'm number one. I love this. This is a great house to be in. And I was sincere. And went back to mom and dad. I said, oh, by the way, I really like your new haircut. Went back to mom and dad. Okay. And then he came in and he brought me a Propel water thing. And he said, these taste really good in water. I said, well, that's nice, but this is tea, honey. He said, I'll get you some water. I said, that's just so amazing. That was very thoughtful of you. Not only did he get me water, he opened it up, I put it in there. He sat right down next to me. And I had a drink. He said, strawberry kiwi is my favorite. And I said, it's very good. I've never tried strawberry kiwi. But I mean, talk about a walking attitude. But what he was doing was looking for some recognition. He's looking for somebody to notice him. And in working with these parents, he was spending so much time getting negative attention that's the habit that he created, not only at home, but at school. And so when he started giving me all the attitude, so I, you know, because all the other professionals like, you can't talk like that. Don't call me that, you know, that's inappropriate. Well, he knows that. You know, the kids know that. It's what's going on underneath the behavior. It was, I need to be noticed positively. Okay. I need somebody to say I'm special. Even though I'm 6'2", 220 pounds and 13, somebody needs to look at me like I'm special. And so when you have a teenager that's got an attitude, it's not that they just want to have an attitude. Something's going on. As Josh said, it's that feeling underneath the behavior. And helping them evaluate what's underneath the behavior. You can't be, you know, angry and frustrated and responsive and be laughing and smiling. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm just gonna make it. I mean, I wasn't going anywhere. I was like right there stuck. And, you know, we're gonna see if it works. And, you know, and I do this all the time and no fail so far. But we have to really look at it with, you know, and they said, and give Marcia the attitude question, because it's not the attitude, it's an attitude. You go into it and you're playful and you accept them where they're at, you know, and in this case, it's like, oh, dang, I didn't want to be that today. Better luck tomorrow. And then just walk away and disengage from them. And it takes that power out of them. And accepting, I accepted him, whatever it is, I'm not going anywhere. I'm here for you. I'm here for this family. And this could be a long 2 hours, but I'm gonna make it work and I'm gonna get the best 2 hours, or I'm gonna finish that day. I'm gonna go to bed tired tonight. But, and this is where we have to be for our kids, our teenagers. When they come in and you're like, oh, how was school? Fine. What do you want? It's like, oh, how was lunch? Be playful with it. Oh, I can have what's on today. Did you get up on the wrong side of bed? Be really playful with it. Be curious sometimes. Sometimes playfulness, they mistake as sarcasm, and you might say, gosh, I wonder if you didn't do so well on your math test today. I wonder, if, you had some friend problems, we forget sometimes, lunch is a very scary time for kids because that kind of puts a spotlight on who they can't eat lunch with, and they don't have anybody to sit by, they don't have any friends. PE, because it puts a spotlight on how unathletic I am, especially if they do the schoolyard pick, which I know trauma-informed schools, they do that. However, not every school is trauma-informed. So being curious, I wonder if you didn't do, how was PE today? What'd you have for lunch? If they didn't eat, don't even talk to them, feed them. Hangry is a real emotion. Okay, just go straight to food. And when they say, oh, I don't care about, so-and-so's mad at me and I don't really care about them, then just empathize. Wow, I know that you like that friend and now that they're not nice to you. So adolescents, they're supposed to have an attitude, but we also want to stay connected to them. And I think that's what's really important as a parent, is finding out what's going on behind that attitude. And sometimes it might just be developmental. I am just crabby today and grouchy. You know what? I've had those days too. So if you go into their attitude with your own attitude of being playful, accepting, and empathic, it will change the whole dynamics of the house.
So remember, playful, accepting, curious, empathic. Makes a big difference.
Makes a big difference.
So, okay, Amanda.
Yeah, that's right.
When kids push the limits, either in response to a traumatic event or just because they're at that age where they're going to push limits, are more rules and more structure? Is that the best way to address the situation?
Not at all. So at Chaddock, we really talk about structure, nurture, balance. If we're coming in as the heavy hammer and we're setting the rules and you can't do this and you can't do this, do that one more time. Now you're grounded for a week, 2 weeks, and no phone, and no, you're just getting in this never ending cycle of something that you're never going to be able to follow through with it. And two, you're not using connection as a way to build your relationship. So at Chaddock, we talk about structure, nurture, balance. So if I'm going to increase structure, I also have to increase nurture. So structure is great with the consistency, the predictability, routine. It's going to help me with safety, but nurture is also going to help me with that connection. So what do I mean by nurture? Nurture looks a lot of different ways to a lot of different people. Nurture can be like, hey, good job. But what I challenge parents to do is add a touch. Hey, good job. So you can think of, I'm pushing that good job into them so they feel it. I see them, I hear them, I notice them, I'm pushing that feeling into them. And at the same time, you're helping them co-regulate, because one brain needs another brain to regulate. So not only am I working on connection, I'm regulating her because I'm putting some firm pressure on here. I got you, it's okay. So pushing it in helps keep them regulated. And with structure and nurture balance, it's going to help kids have control and ownership over some of their behaviors. We're going to offer them choices, simple choices. Do you want the red cup or the blue cup? Do you want to brush your teeth before story or after story? So we're going to empower them as well. So that's why structure is great, but you have to balance it with nurture to really be effective.
Okay, Kirsty. A lot of kids are getting ready to start their summer break. When it comes to dealing with trauma, is a break a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Or do parents need to respond differently in the summer when there's more free time than versus the school year? We're coming into it, so what do we need to be thinking about?
Well, my first response when I thought about that question is no, parents should not be different. As Amanda was just talking about, you know, children need a balance of structure and nurture in order to, how we term, feel safe. And what we mean by that is for them to move out of their back brain and into mid and front brain, where they can behave the way that we would love them to behave, you know, where they can do all of those important skills like clean their bedroom up for you before they, you know, make their bed, get their chores done. And just so you know, I'm still working on that with my kiddos. So we're all human, and it's not perfect all the time, but the goal is to get them to feel safe. And so when our children are at school, they have very high levels of structure, and they also have high levels of nurture because, you know, we have wonderful nurturing teachers. And so what this creates is this predictability. I know how my teacher responds by the end of the school year. I have a great connection because they are emotionally responsive. They're predictable. I have schedules in place. Now, when it comes to summertime, all of that's out of the window. And it's so important that we continue to maintain as much as possible while also giving a little bit of freedom, you know? So if we can keep some of that structure in, okay, so tomorrow, here's what's going to happen. We're going to do A, B, C, and D. And you know, we might have this for dinner, or we might go out for dinner. So I've prepared my child for what's coming, but I've also helped them understand that things may change a bit. And, you know, as we've all said, the connection piece is most important. What's going to help your child to manage those changes is going to be you. And how you are co-regulating them and supporting them through that process.
Great. Okay,
Can I ask a question?
yes,
And
absolutely.
I already have the book, so. So your example where it kind of flipped on a moment. That is atypical, I would like to think. Maybe it's not, but I'd like, sometimes you run into a child that's set in his ways, and 1, 2, 3, 4 comments aren't going to make a difference. They're still just going after you. Is it okay to turn around and say, we're not going to talk about this right now? Because you're about to flip out yourself, you know, that coolness that you have that perhaps doesn't exist in everyone. So there is a point where you say, you're really taking it over the top, you know. And what's the best way to do that, I guess?
Good, Marcia. Poor Mandy,
Okay, you can jump in. You know, if you have a kid that does try to take it over the top, you're right, you're gonna have to set that hard line. No, we're done. Okay, I'm not gonna play. But how you do it is how it's gonna set the stage. And if you say, that's enough. Okay, that's gonna send that kid in the deep end. Quick, fast, in a hurry. You know, if you say, okay, we're done, knock it off. And it's low, and I tell parents, low and slow for correction. Very few words. Knock it off. You can't make me. Knock it off. I'm done. I'm not playing. What are you gonna do about it? I'm done. I'm gonna turn around and walk away. I hope you calm. Okay, because kids need to know that it's okay to disengage. Parents need to know to disengage, especially if it's getting to you. Okay, and I'm not gonna say I haven't been there, okay, but I've been here for 33 years. All right, nothing gets me there, you know, but it used to. And so it's like, okay, I'm done. Now, if you don't want to turn your back on it for obvious reasons, sometimes like at Chaddock, you're just gonna back up and you're gonna say, I'm gonna take a break and I'll be back. So tell them what you're doing. I'm gonna go outside for 10 minutes and I'll be back. Because especially you've got a kid that it's like, oh my gosh, now I've really made them mad and they're gonna go away and they're never gonna come back, which is a lot of kids that we have with, you know, they're gonna like chase you out the door and then they're gonna escalate. So you're gonna say, I need 5 minutes. I'll be back. I'm going outside. And you're saying it low and slow and very short. Okay, if they can tolerate the playfulness, that way, you know, you can do that, but if not, you got yourself a break. Okay, even if you have to take a break in the restroom, and that's what I tell the parents when they have multiple children, they don't generally follow you into the bathroom. Take a break in the bathroom, take a deep breath, put a washcloth on yourself, regroup yourself. But it also regroups them. And then you come back and say, okay, I'm better, I hope you're better. Can we move forward? Okay. The more you hit it head on, okay, what's gonna happen with that? They're like here, they push that limit, you're up here, they're going up here, and you guys are going like this. So your braids are matching in the wrong direction. Okay, so what you want to do, sometimes you can go up here, if they're like way up here, you can say, I hear you, but there's nothing I can do about it. I'm sorry that you're mad. This is not going anywhere. But you don't, I know. So you match them up here and you start bringing them down, but you don't match them in language but you match them in. And then you start bringing them down because that will bring them down. That frequently works. I even made it work on a 15-year-old boy who was playing Fortnite and had to come meet with the ladies. And that was not a good day in the house, I tell you that. The ladies, Fortnite, whoa, it was a ugly scene for 15 minutes. But he's like, I'm not talking to you. And I said, I don't care if you don't talk to me. Well, I'm going to my room. That's fine. I will follow you. I'm still not talking to you. Okay, but I'm still following you. Okay. Well, I'm gonna lock the door. Okay, I'm not busting it down. Well, what are you gonna do? I'm just sitting. Turned out beautiful. Talk, blanket over the head, talk to me about all this trauma. But I didn't get into that crashing. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Can I add something and add a piggyback?
Okay, I would just also be cautious of using the word you. I would always use I or we, because if you are gonna say, well, you're to do it, you to do it, you to do it, you're gonna put them into shame, you're gonna keep them in that back part of their brain. So always put it on you or we, if you can. It's gonna take a little bit of the sting out of it, but you're still gonna have to do the word that Marcia just talked about. But they can't say, no, I didn't, if you said it's about me.
Right.
Right, and actually, Amanda, what you just said is linking to what I was thinking is the one thing that you noticed about what Marcia did is it was always we're together. Even if she took a break, she said, I'm coming back. And that's really, I think, the key piece there is that even if you have to take a break, you always come back and repair the relationship. And when we have children who don't have very stable or consistent relationships, that's the piece that's so important. And it's always together. And that use of the word we has, over the years of being in this field, has become my vocabulary. I don't think I rarely use the word you anymore. It's always, we'll do this together, or what can we do about this?
Thank you.
Before we end, I'm gonna come back and let you all give one tip, but I wanna go ahead and open it up to other questions, that the audience might have. Yes, sir.
Getting back to the Uvalde massacre, and up in Michigan, when they said they sent counselors there, and you guys are counselors, how do you approach something like that?
Sure. So there are evidence-based programs called psychological first aid, mental health first aid that kind of gives you procedures on how to help support individuals who have experienced a really, a community that has experienced significant trauma like that. And so, often the first thing is everybody safe, right? How do we create safety, and does everybody have their basic needs met? And then you start looking at individual, what do you need versus does he need, as next steps to help address that trauma. And it's kind of like a triage where you try to look at who has the greatest need and be able to utilize resources in a way to meet the individuals that have significant need right now, where, you know, Matt's feeling okay. So he can go over here, he feels safe, he has his basic needs met, and so I'm gonna have Matt go work with Kirsty, and you and I are gonna talk a little bit about what this experience was like for you.
Yes,
Question for Martha. You had talked earlier about people living together, their brain chemistries start to match. I know we don't have time for a whole thing on that, but can you elaborate on that? And I guess more specifically, which brain wins out?
Actually, it depends on which brain regulates the best, you know. Gosh, see, I love talking about the brain, and we have 12 minutes.
you're
already.
fine.
And I'll be. Okay, thank you. So here's the cool part about the brain, okay? We have all sorts of different chemistries, and it starts right here, like day one, and your body produces oxytocin, not Oxycontin, oxytocin to fall in love with your baby, okay? And so from the very beginning, your body is producing oxytocin, you're downloading into that baby the oxytocin, and so their brain, that's that love drug, okay? And dads produce it too, which is the cool stuff. And through time, through eye contact, through touch, you know, touch increases dopamine levels. It's that feel-good stuff. It increases serotonin levels. So we're touching, we're looking at these babies through their, how special they are, even when they're having an attitude, we still are loving them, okay? It's when we start getting stressed, it's when we start getting, not having the ability to regulate ourselves because we're stressed out about our kid, okay? So the kid's stressed out, we're stressed out, okay? Now our brain comes, what can I do to help you? So it's more in the eyes, it's more, these interactions are, we've lost that power of love and touch that increases the serotonin. And so it's the adrenals that are going, oh my gosh, you know, how many of us has walked in the house and you can, you know, into a room and you can just feel the tension, okay? That's everybody's brain chemistries and bodies going, this ain't gonna go well, I can tell. And so that brain starts worrying, and then the worried adrenals come and all of that. And so you're just waiting for that one thing. And that one thing might say, well, today we're going to start a new project. What? I can't even get my other project done, you know? And you're like, when it's a good project, we don't even wait to hear what's being said. And it's the same thing when you're parenting kids. You know, you're so stressed out and you hear, mom, 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 mom. What? I love you. You know, because they've now lost what they want to say. And that's because they're like, okay, she's mad, so I better stop. And I better, you know, so the brain chemistries, does that make sense? So it's like dopamines and serotonin start really looking like each other. And that starts.
So how you win the regulation?
What?
You said whoever comes out.
Oh, who wins it? Whoever wins it is the one that calms down and can consistently stay regulated on a consistent basis. Because you're all, you know, the kid is always, not always, the kid is often gonna say, mom, 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 and you're saying, yes, dear, what do you need? They're gonna say, well, can I ask, da, 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 da. Okay, so the more you're regulated, the more you're gonna regulate them.
And I think what helps is when you're in that situation, if you can, it helps. My experience has helped me regulate faster. That I have to take the personalization piece out of it, right? So it's not me, it's his brain. It's not me, it's his brain. So, because ideally I want to win because I'm the adult and I need to help this child. So that's something that you can use to kind of help regulate, because it's not, it's his brain. His brain's firing or her brain is firing and it needs help. It's not about me. It's about the brain and what they've experienced.
One of the big falsehoods I learned through the years at Chaddock is the adults aren't always in charge. The adults are not always in charge. You know, which brain is the regulated one? Is the one that's in charge?
Sometimes it takes another adult to regulate.
Yes,
you know, we do tapping out here at Chaddock. I can say, Josh, I need to walk away for a minute. Can you step in? It takes a lot of vulnerability to be able to say that and to ask for help. And I understand too that not everybody has help around them either if you're a single parent, which is why it's so important to do, as Marsha and Amanda are saying, is to really recognize what's going on for me, but to not be afraid to say, you know what, I'm gonna take a step back, and when I'm ready, we'll regroup.
A really great visualization to use is that we can get into dysfunctional dances with our child. And so, you know, we're in the middle of a foxtrot. We have to, as the adult, we have to be the one that's going to change. To try to, you know, it's our responsibility to recognize that we're in this dysfunctional pattern. And I don't want to do a foxtrot. We need to do a waltz. And so I need to do whatever that is I need to do to, is that tag out? Is that take a break? Is that whatever it is that I need to do to regulate myself so that I can come back in? And I start leading us through the waltz, and then they might resist at first, but eventually they'll come around and start doing that new pattern with us.
I do want to share one thing, sorry, because I know, it got me started on the brain. So the front part, the executive functioning part, is the part of the brain that they said is rationalization, impulse control, learning and functioning and organizing and planning. And I'm going to say impulse control again. Okay, that's it. And it's not fully developed. Okay, so it used to be, it was fully developed until 25. Now, because of electronics and all that, it's not fully developed till 28. So if you think you're going to, I know, right? I had to say this, but if we expect our kids, when they are struggling, when stress is going on, to be calm and collected and not impulsively do dumb things, we have to wait till we're 25 and 28 to figure that out. Our job is to stay regulated enough to say, that was not a good decision. Now, what's next,
So is it ever okay to be playful in the midst of?
Always be playful. If you can go to playfulness, that is like your first go-to. The more playful and the funnier, I think I'm a hoot. Sometimes my kids don't think so, but I think I'm hilarious. And so the more funny you can be, the more you're going to bring that brain chemistry and regulate them quickly. One of the biggest recommendations I say for my parents, and one of the tips is, you got to laugh daily, whether it's playing a game laughing, whether you have a favorite show that's funny, find something and laugh once a day, because it changes your entire brain. It takes you totally out of back brain, and it really connects you to the other person. And if you can watch something that's funny and sit next to each other, score for you as a parent.
I would like to add to, it's important to use playfulness without falling into sarcasm,
Yes.
which is easy to do. So you have to be mindful that you're not being sarcastic while being playful.
Absolutely. Other questions?
So we're talking about all this, especially bills going through Congress and more money for mental health and things like that. The fact of the matter is, from what I'm hearing, a lot of it is on the adult.
But for the children, it can be, it can be a turning factor in helping children heal. Yes.
What's the answer?
I think the answer right now is put on us as parents, as adults. You're gonna go seek some mental health services and they're gonna be like, oh, well, I can get you in about 6 to 9 months. 6 to 9 months, are you kidding me? They're gonna be far worse than they are right now. So how can I reach out to places and just get all the information I can as a parent to help support my child? So I'm gonna have to learn how to do things differently, because I can't wait for somebody else to do it.
I will tell you the beauty of the book, Raising the Challenging Child. Okay, the beauty of that, where it's for biological children, foster children, adopt children, and it's so.
And the grown-ups too.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
grown-ups too, yeah, grown-ups too, because and if you're not a reader, you don't have to be, you can go to Chris. That's what I tell my dad, my moms read, you know, and the dads read the highlights. Now I say, the beauty of this book, dads, you don't have to read the highlights, you can go to grids, you know, and
Talk about the grids. We have a grid in the back of each chapter. Maybe you've tried this, do this instead.
Yeah. and just go to that and see whichever one works. And I have yet to have a parent go, yeah, don't like that book. You know, they're like, oh yeah, I get it. And every lesson isn't for every family all the time, but it might be, you got this lesson here and okay, did you try that? Oh, no, let me go back and try this. You know, so,
And you're gonna have to try it more than once.
and then they're gonna get onto you, they're gonna figure it out, so then you have to tweak it.
I used this phrase one time and it didn't work for me. Well, like you're gonna have to try it over and over and over again because we're retraining the brain, it needs repetition. So it's frustrating for us as parents to learn something new. So we're all in the boat together with the kids and ourselves learning a different dance, as Josh alluded to.
And I would say when you read it, how many times have we given a suggestion to a parent? And they shake their head and that will never work with my child. Right up until the time that it does. So, okay, we're getting really short on time. I'm giving you time to think ahead. If you had one tip to give a parent that was struggling with their child, what would that be? Josh?
The power of the pause, being able to just take a moment. You know, not everything has to be handled just this moment. And sometimes we need a break. I need a break. I need to think about what am I feeling? What am I thinking? What do I want the outcome of this interaction with my child to be? And then come back to it.
Kirsty?
It's all about relationship. So relationship needs to come first, and then we can redirect.
Marcia?
Touch, praise, and laugh with your child/children daily will make a huge difference.
Amanda?
Connect, listen, and be emotionally present.
And every 2 hours, feed and water the children.
Every 2 hours, feed water the children and more often if they need it.
And no more than 12 words.
No more than 12 words, you're spitting in the wind. That's a very courtesy.
So we are at 6:30 and I want to honor all of your time. We will be around if any of you have questions that didn't get answered. And you would like to talk to any of our experts here, we will be around. Again, please feel free to pick up handouts. We've got, this is daily devotionals. It says for foster and adopted parent, it's really for any parent. We have a few copies left of that, so if you would like one of those, please help yourself. And thank you very much for coming tonight and for all the ways that you support your kids.